Thanks very much for checking out this episode of Turning to Him. If you enjoy what you hear, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave comments, share it with your friends, all the basic stuff. When you do things like that, it makes it easier for other people to find the channel and add goodness into their lives. Thanks again. You bring your new son into your life, and then 11 months, well, not 11 months, and then you bring a biological son into your life. So now you have 4 kids.
Yep.
And tell me about this next chapter of life.
The next chapter was leaving my mom's house. At this time, while we were there, my grandpa was also there living in her basement. And so we got to be there and watch our kids go next door and see my grandpa. And that was fun. And my husband soon was like, I think it's time to start looking into our own place. And I felt really strongly that that would be the best thing for us too.
Okay, so wait, so at this time you're living with your mom and dad?
Yeah. So yeah, that's another piece of the story. My mom was living there on her own at this time.
Okay.
That's another whole part of the story back a little ways, which we can get into that because that was a huge thing. Probably one of the biggest things.
Okay.
If you listen to my podcast, that's where I started. So my mom was there and my grandpa was in her basement. And yeah.
Okay.
So then we decided, let's go see if there's even a possibility of getting our own place. And that's a faith building thing too, because it's how in the world are we supposed to get our own house? I don't think we are making enough, but for some reason, my husband's like, no, there's ways. And we were able to be blessed and buy our first home. So yeah,
okay.
It was a flip. So
yes.
We got in there and we had a lot of work to do, but my husband's amazing and does that. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it sounds like both of you are pretty darn amazing. Okay, so tell me, you said your mom was living there by herself at this time, and that's the biggest part of the story. Okay, so tell me the story.
Okay, so back actually when we were in Logan, this was a pretty transforming part in my life actually. And we were just living in Logan, going to school, had no idea what was going on at home with our families. I mean, little bits, but to say we had nothing going on, you'll understand. And so it was actually, we were coming down to Salt Lake to celebrate our anniversary, probably our second anniversary, third anniversary. I could figure it out if I did all the math. But so we went to the temple, we came out of the temple, and I get this phone call from my aunt. And she's like, you got to get home. Can you get here? And I'm like, well, I just got out of the temple. I need to go check on my daughter. She's at my sister-in-law's house. And that's another tender mercy. We felt very prompted to stay at my sister-in-law's house when we came down here. For whatever reason, we didn't know. And so my aunt's like, you need to get here right now. And all I could think of was my grandpa, living at my mom's house. And I was like, oh, okay, let me see if I can take my sweet girl to his parents' house and we'll run over, So we do that. It all works out and we get to my house and it's just somber and low. And my mom is in the house just crying. And this girl living in her apartment at the time came out and we grew up together. She's a little bit younger than me, but she was living there and she just came up to me and said, I'm so sorry. And she gave me the biggest hug. And here I am deer in the headlights, what in the world is going on? And I even asked my aunt, I was like, is grandpa okay? And she's like, yes, grandpa's fine. You just need to get here. And so, wheels are turning in my head. What in the world? I have no idea what's happening. Long story short, my dad had been arrested and taken, and so this part in my story is just one of those where I just felt alone and lost and confused. And yeah. And that is definitely a time where I had to dig deep and know of my own self-worth and learn not to feel of the world's view on certain things of people going to prison and the type of people they are. Because I was I just honestly felt alone at that time. And so since then, and that's why I said in the future, my mom was there by herself because my dad was in prison at that
Okay.
time and still is to this day, but he is getting close to the end.
Okay.
And so there's just so much I had to learn and go through. And a couple years after that had happened, I learned that it was okay to open up about it and talk about it. And I felt so much lighter when I did. And that's when I started my first podcast, like in 2022, clear back
Okay.
then. And wait, no, 2019 or even earlier. Anyway, and then I took a break and now I'm back because I felt so strongly that people needed to know they weren't alone in the things that they were going through. So
Yes.
that was
Okay.
the huge thing that I was talking about.
Okay. Before I forget, what is the name of that podcast?
It's it was called Strengthened by Stories, but I've kind
Okay.
of just merged them. There's
Okay.
probably still stories on there that you could listen to, but I'm not active on that one anymore.
Okay. Okay.
And I changed it so I could be geared more towards Christ being in our stories for this one.
Yes. All
So
right. Um, that's an experience that not a lot of people have.
mhm.
Uh, Watching one of their I mean, you weren't watching, but one of their parents being arrested and then further incarcerated.
Yes. My
Um,
brother was there. I was not, but yeah, very hard.
you said who was there?
My brother,
Your
at
brother was there.
my youngest brother.
Okay. Um, Walk me through kind of, it seems like experiences like that either strengthen a family or begin to fracture a family.
Mhm.
If I can make it that binary, how did your family respond to that?
I think we handled the situation pretty well. I feel like it brought us closer together. Uh, for a while, my mom like couldn't talk about it and did not want to talk about it, didn't want to bring it up. It was really hard. And the rest of us like wouldn't talk about it either because it's like taboo topic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like not even amongst your siblings, not even in
Yeah,
your family.
we
We're
don't
not
really
talking
talk
about this.
about it too much either. And to this day, we talk about it, but I really don't think we have dove in with each other still to this day to like understand all of our feelings around it because most of us were out of the house, and things. So I think there are things that we still need to go over, especially those who are quieter.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But yeah, eventually we were able to open up and talk a little bit more about it. And I think it was because like for me, I felt once I opened up about it and just told one person or something, the relief I felt was amazing. And it was just like, I felt like I wasn't alone. And so when I started opening up about it, I feel like others of my siblings were more open to talking about it. But it took a long time. And still my mom would be like, oh, no, no, and she would always, she's still to this day, not as much, but she calls it oh now I can't even think of what she calls the prison. She calls it, I'll think about it. But
Okay.
she doesn't use the name like prison or does that make sense? So it's really
Yeah.
hard for her. Now she has opened up a little bit more and can do that. But I imagine that it was harder on her in different ways than it was for us.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part for me is because I was like, what? Like I had no clue anything was going on.
Yes.
Besides looking back, the little phone calls that my dad had called me and just talked to me up in Logan and even talking to my husband, like little things he would say here and there were like, okay, he was ensuring us that things were going to be okay. Like
Okay.
looking, but at that time, it was just like a sweet conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
So,
perhaps he knew that something was coming.
yeah, I have an inkling that he knew that there was an investigation or something going on.
Okay.
So, but we didn't until I think there were some in my family who did, as far as I know. Me being the sweet daughter that he wanted to protect, as far as I know, I think that's why it didn't really come out and I didn't know much that was going on because
Hmm.
there was a protecting factor there.
Okay. Well, I certainly can relate to that. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I mean, as parents, we want to protect our kids from the difficult things of the world.
Yeah.
How do you decide and begin to balance um, the scale of, on the one hand, I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm not going to talk about this, and I'm just going to process this by myself, and that's how this is going to work. To
Mhm.
the other end of the scale is I'm going to share every nitty gritty detail of my life, and everybody's going to know exactly what I'm thinking, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. I feel like both of those are probably not the right way to handle it. So,
Mm-mm.
how do you choose, as someone who's gone through something that's pretty tough and also somewhat unique? How have you decided this is an appropriate time to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about it at this level? These are the details that I'm going to share, but these are the details that I'm not going to share. I'm going to keep this part just private between me and maybe my husband and that type of thing.
Yeah. It's it's tough to know. Especially when you have kids, like our kids involved and their
Hmm. Hmm.
grandpa's not in their life, you know. Our oldest was the only one that knew him outside of
Okay.
and she was 1.5 when this happened. So she was pretty young. So all of our kids have questions. And that is really tough because it's like, well, we want them to know. And as they've gotten older, I feel like we've told them a little bit. And sometimes the things we even tell them, I wonder if I did it right. Does that make sense? And so
Hmm.
it's really, I really have to rely on the spirit to say, okay, what should they know? What shouldn't they know? They don't know like super grand details, but they know like somewhat why. And someday I hope to be a little bit more specific because I don't think I even know the whole story. You know, honestly, I know enough that I need to know right now,
Hmm.
I feel like. And so, yeah, just knowing what to share and when to share it, I think really comes from the spirit. And actually, I feel like my kids have a little bit more knowledge than um, I would anticipate that I would have told them. Like growing up, like I probably would have been like, oh, let's like just keep it. He's there. Something happened, you know. But I
Hmm.
feel like the kids growing up nowadays know more and need to know more. I
Sure.
feel like sometimes I don't know how to explain it, but that's just a tough thing to know when to share and what to share. But with other people, um, I'm pretty open about that part of it. And I don't think it's my place to share what happened because
Hmm.
it that part of the story is not mine. My part of the story is how I felt when it happened. And, you know, and I have grown to love the Savior and help him fill those gaps where my dad could have been. Because there's times where I'm like, oh, if he was just here. And when I do talk to my dad, we are so blessed to be able to talk to him pretty regularly. My mom talks to him like every week,
Hmm.
and he calls the kids sporadically. And it's just been such a blessing to hear how his testimony has been strengthened even in the midst of prison
Yes.
and how much good he still is doing in such a horrible circumstance. And so my testimony of the Savior has grown tremendously. I know that he loves those good people who make mistakes. Even good people make mistakes, you know? And as a little girl, my dad was always my hero, you know? And he still is my hero because of what he's going through and the testimony and the goodness he's doing where he's at. So
Yes.
that's what I love to pull into it is, you know, Christ loves all of us, even the ones who do make mistakes. And because of him, we can overcome that and grow. So I'm still
Yeah.
looking forward to that time where my dad rejoins us as a family. And that's only a few years away, like 2, 3 years probably. And so we're kind of on this end of it, like, wow, this is actually going to happen. And it's kind of been a bummer now that we're towards that end because just a little while ago, we found out that he has cancer and he's battling that.